I don't think that the president heretofore has shown that he has the backbone or the strength to stay the course and to do what needs to be done. But I want you to know that the Congress is fully committed to going in and doing whatever it takes to eradicate this threat.
America wants to feel safer. The people of this nation want to be able to put their head on the pillow at night, send their kids to school, walk around the shopping mall or the ball game and feel absolutely safe. But 13 years after this nation experienced the worst terrorist attack on our shores, there remains this uneasy feeling, the dread and the anger that we haven't learned enough, and we cannot stop ourselves from being put into situations that may only lead to the demise of more innocents. Let's welcome to MidPoint Senator from Wisconsin and a member of several committees, including Homeland Security. It's a pleasure to welcome Ron Johnson into the show. Senator, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hello, Ed. How are you doing?
It's been a tough day. I'm going to be very honest with you. As someone who grew up in the city of New York, it has been a very difficult day for me and for so many other people and many of the friends that I've spoken to. And I will be very frank with you, many of the people that I spoke with who experienced what happened 13 years ago today in Manhattan are angry. They are angry that once again, even after the president speaking last night, they don't feel any safer. They don't feel as if we are taking enough steps, and we should have learned and maybe not been at this situation again 13 years later. Would you agree with that and at least respond to some of that, because that's how so many Americans feel?
Well, you're right and they're right. We aren't safer. I don't agree with President Obama. I think our defenses are better. We've had some problems just in terms of information gathering, intelligence gathering, because of the traitorous Ed Snowden. But the threat is greater. It just simply is. It's no longer just al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan. Now you've got the al-Nusra Front and ISIS in Syria and Iraq. You've got certainly terrorists in Somalia and Yemen and Mali and Algeria. And, al-Qaeda, Islamic terror has literally metastasized around the world. And, my concern is that we're not heeding the lessons of history. We buried our head in the sand in the 90s when al-Qaeda declared war on us, and because we denied that reality, you are there 13 years later, witnesses to that disaster as thousands of Americans were slaughtered because we denied reality. We weren't willing to face it. We were turning our face away from it, burying our heads in the sand. And now last night, President, in his summation, the final paragraph, he said our own safety, our own security depends on our willingness to do what it takes to defend this nation. Nice words, but he contradicted that very statement earlier when he took actions off the table. He is not committed. He is not totally 100% committed to the very goal he stated, which was ultimately destroy ISIS. There's not a strategy in place to do so.
Why is he not? And I know we're going to ask some very simple questions here, but again, I think that's the best way to get this. Why then is the President of the United States, in your opinion, not committed to this goal? It would seem to be the single most important thing that he has on his plate at this time.
He just has, that's his ideology, I guess. He just has such a reluctance, such a revulsion to actually leading, utilizing America's military strength. Remember, this is the president that went in his first part of his term and apologized for America. He doesn't believe America is a force for good in the world. He thinks our involvement in the world actually makes matters worse, that we upset people because we engage in the world, because we lead. And so he's had a strategy. I totally disagreed when people mocked him for not having a strategy. No, he's had a strategy. It's been a strategy of apology, a strategy of denial, a strategy of withdrawal. And I think this is the Wall Street Journal coined this term, peace through withdrawal does not work. We are witnessing the disastrous consequences of his historic blunder not to leave a stabilizing force behind in Iraq. That's why Iraq is disintegrating, and that's why ISIS was able to rise from the ashes of what was al-Qaeda in Iraq. We had defeated them. But remember, Ed, we had surged over 160,000 American troops in 2007 as part of that effort to defeat 6,000 to 8,000 al-Qaeda in Iraq, and now we've got at least 15,000, and we're hearing those numbers are growing.
I have to then ask you another simple question. You talked about it a couple of minutes ago. You mentioned the fact, and I've said this many times, the failure to learn from history. Here's another one of those simple questions from the American public. Why are we still so stupid as a nation and a government. And I'm going to use that word because you hear it from the common guy on the street. If we've known about this, if these problems have been here, and we're right back where we are again, why are we so stupid? What are we missing in our brain power, in our leadership, that at least gets to the point of having us to where we can feel secure again? They ask it so much, and I'm so glad that you're here to answer that question.
We're human. You know, people don't want to face hard realities, tough truths. You know, we have a tendency of not admitting we have problems until we hit rock bottom. And of course, then when you have political leaders like the president did a year ago, declare the war on terror over, people buy that. When in January, after ISIS took over Fallujah, you've got the president in an interview saying, it's just the JV team. We are, through political leadership of this administration, we are lulling people to become complacent. And so, finally, the president, reality smacked him, right upside the head. He's being forced reluctantly, way too late, to just start acknowledging reality. But again, I look at that speech, and there's just so many contradictions in it. He says many of the right things. He's got a strategy in place that have elements of things we must do. Obviously, you're going to have to start degrading ISIS before you destroy them. We need a coalition of the willing. We should cut their funding. We should improve intelligence. Strengthen our defenses. Okay, we need to do all those things. But first and foremost, we must be 100% committed to the goal he stated, which is destroy ISIS. They can't be contained, they can't be managed, they can't be negotiated with.
So then, in your opinion, what was not said last night in the speech, or what wasn't said well enough?
Well, he did not convince me, and so I don't think he convinced potential coalition partners, allies, or the American public that he's totally committed to his goal. I just take away that was pretty much a political speech saying the things he pretty well had to in the face of public opinion, which is way ahead of him. I mean, what you're seeing once again is President Obama is leading from behind. The American public, having witnessed the barbaric video beheadings of 2 American journalists, that's an act of terrorism against America. It really had to be pulled along by public opinion to finally make the speech that he should have made 6 months or a year ago.
Senator Johnson, I have to ask you this. We had Bernie Kerik on just a few moments ago, the former New York City police commissioner, and he's very outspoken. He was there during 9/11. I said this to him. He has actually said this on the record as well. Sometimes we as Americans, we don't actually understand sometimes what is facing us. Sometimes we put it off. Sometimes we like to hide. Sometimes our government likes to hide. There is a thinking process that maybe even we as Americans, we need to see those shots of the Twin Towers being hit by planes more often. Some would even say, including Bernie, that we need to see Americans beheaded in order for us to understand what is really facing us and to understand the evil that is going up against us every day. Would you agree then that these are the things that Americans need to see in order to give them the right perspective and resolve against this enemy?
I absolutely agree. How else do you face reality unless you're willing to acknowledge it and look evil in the eye? We sanitize things. I've been guilty of this. So, when I talk about ISIS, they enslave women. Oh, no. They do far worse than enslave women. The people that took over, the troops that took over the Mosul Dam reported 2 women bound, naked, had been raped repeatedly. I've seen an ISIS fighter with his arm around his 7-year-old bride. I've seen a 7-year-old Australian boy, his father had joined the jihad, posted this picture of his 7-year-old son holding one of the heads with the caption, "That's my boy." Okay? No, we do sanitize these things. We have to face reality. And of course, this president, as I mentioned earlier, has not been willing to utilize his bully pulpit to tell the American people why ISIS, why Islamic terror represents such a threat to America. And part of it is because he simply refuses to acknowledge he lost the peace. His strategy of withdrawal, his historic blunder, not leaving a stabilizing force behind, has been responsible for the disintegration of Iraq, has allowed events to spin out of control, and has brought us to this very point where now our options are limited, and it is going to take far more resolute, strong action, and I'm just not sure whether this president really has it in him to act.
I got about 20 seconds left. How insulted were you when the president used his speech to also talk about his economic policies?
Well, it certainly wasn't necessary. This is the time you need to focus the Americans' attention on exactly what ISIS is, the threat that global terrorism represents to us, to rally the public support. And by the way, it can't be just one speech. This is what the president has to use his bully pulpit again and again until we ultimately destroy ISIS. If he's serious about this, he's got to continue to use his bully pulpit. And let's not distract us on other issues right now. Let's keep a focus on what the goal is that we must achieve.
Senator Ron Johnson, frank talk. I appreciate your honesty as well. I certainly hope we get a chance to do this again, sir.
Have a great day.
Thank you, you too. Later on this hour, a little loophole, a little of your tax money, and a little marijuana for good measure. After the break, there is sacrilege happening right now here in America when it comes down to the economy and your fast food. It's the Money Master and so much more coming up right here on MidPoint.